Welcome to Brother to Brother Talk. I'm Mark Carvin-Old, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. Welcome to Brother Talk. We cover issues, we cover concerns of the Black community. We are solution-driven dialogue. We want to open up the floodgates to your solutions being given a platform, given a space where you can make your solution known to a particular issue. And we want to make it clear no one person, no one group, no one organization has all the solutions for every problem that surfaces. And so when the conundrums arise, the people who are most affected by that conundrum are best equipped to offer up the solution. Here at Brother to Brother Talk, we want to make sure that you have a voice, you have a platform, you have an opportunity to share what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and also what it is that you recognize as a solution to remedy the conundrum that you find yourself and others find themselves. Because people talk among themselves. That's what Brother to Brother Talk is about. And so people who are affected by a problem will share that commonality and discuss it among themselves. Unfortunately, their voices are not heard because the dialogue is among those who are suffering the brunt of an ordeal. And so the people who are making decisions are not engaged in communication with the people who are most affected by whatever that issue may be. And so here at Brother to Brother Talk, we want to change that paradigm and present a paragon that will enable people to know that, hey, the people who are most affected by a situation and have the greatest stake in the situation should be heard, and their voices should carry plenty of weight. Once again, my name is Mark Carvin-Old, and I'm your host for Brother to Brother Talk. And I'm the Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. We have some issues tonight that we want to get into. The first one that we will discuss is generational transition and interaction. We want to talk about the not just the transfer of power nor the transfer of ideology, but the transition interaction between generational and how that generational transition interaction it impacts the way that we are going to go forward as a people. Also, we want to touch on the cultural experience that we are engaged in right now. What is the effect on the cultural experience, and what impact the cultural experience is having on the generations to come? And of course, the fluidity of the narrative. Why is it changing so much and not addressing the issue with solutions? And finally, this evening, how moving in an unconscious pattern. I'm Mark Carvin-Old, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank, and we're going to take a moment and come back and begin to deal with those 4 topics that we have on tap for you this evening. This is Brother to Brother Talk. We will take a break and we'll be right back. I'm Mark Carvin-Old, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. We'll be back with more solution-driven dialogue on Brother to Brother Talk.
GreenLeafBeef.com. The Great Lockdown of 2020, a mid-crisis analytical report, represents a historical work. The people provide indicators to their needs and roles in building and establishing the new norm. The voice of the people places at the fingertips of decision makers knowledge of how the area's resources should be deployed to best serve the society and address the needs and concerns of the people going forward. This study serves as a guide to where key research should be directed and sets the course to engage resources during crises by future social theoreticians. Comparison of responses on multiple levels provide an uncanny insight. The capture of a population's response in the midst of a crisis compared to a post-crisis reflection shall prove to be of monumental value into human reactions facing uncertainty during and post a calamity.
Welcome back to Brother to Brother Talk. I'm your host, Mark Carbon, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. And once again, we have some topics lined up for you tonight that we are sure will have an impact on your solution, a pattern of how you develop solution, why you feel and why it's so essential for the people who are most affected by conundrums to be the producers of the solution. The fact remains that you should never become so buried in your problem that you can't see your way out. And that's where the generational transition has to slant interaction. It becomes such a vital topic to explore. When the chronological years take their place and unfold, that it will be natural. It's a natural progression for a transition for the elders to make their move off the most active scene and allow those who have been mentored and those who have just observed and those who receive their own revelation to come to the forefront. But in that transition phase, it's not to replace one or remove one. The interaction has to be an idea exchange, and a platform awaits whoever can live and express themselves and maximize the posture of the people and capitalize on the times and issues that are concerned. It's not about replacing one because they failed the other. The transition interaction is a key when you can take sage wisdom and place that within youthful energy. That's a solution to the continuity of leadership. That's the continuity that's the key continuity to the advancement of any people, is that transition into action, knowing how to extract the best from your predecessor and then move forward with your fresh ideas. That is what causes the generational transition interaction to be most productive, most creative. And we need to have the creativity of both. When you talk about the sage wisdom, you're talking about a transition interaction of things that they did not accomplish, not by means of failure, simply because time, energy, resources have expired or are expiring. And so the baton, so to speak, is passed. But in that transition, there has to be interaction. It can't be just left there for you to pick up and run with it without knowing the spirit behind the activities that were there before you. In my instance, I append as much as possible through books and manuals, and now through conversations and interaction. All the historical things that I've been involved with, and when we say historical, we're not talking about those things that uh, get the notoriety attached to them. The historical thing simply is the living of life, the mistakes that you see others make, the mistake that you have made personally, and you uh, set forth in interaction uh, how others can avoid the pitfalls and snares and traps that hinder so many uh, in your current generation and others prior. And so that in the interaction, you're actually passing on wisdom, not diffusing the ideas that others have, the fresh ideas that others have. And they should be fresh. You should have new ideas. Um, you should have new concepts, but that does not minimize the value of sage wisdom to help you further your role as a visionary, help you carry out your mission, uh, and help you to understand the complexities that you face, and help you be mindful of the history, and so that when you're taking steps and marching towards shaping your history, you're not dismissing others. You understand the spiritual equipoise that's needed. And when you have that spiritual balance and the spiritual reflection, so that you have a spiritual center, understanding that faith is key, no matter what your ideology or approach to resolving issues and concern. And so the transition interaction is a key component uh, to helping advance the cause, helping to bring about solutions, and helping to change strategy. We cannot continue to operate out of the same strategy and the same steps without some um, reflection and some new uh, approaches. I mean, education is there, recruitment is there, action is there, creative tension will always be a part. You have to have the creative tension, but you have to also have the wisdom to know how far to go with the creative tension to get the attention of those in authority, and then know how to move them to negotiation and getting an outcome that is desirable. And so the generational transition interaction is not to replace the old with the new, is to make an advancement through the mesh of wisdom with freshness and energy, and allow new ideas to have room to ferment and be as potent, as strong as possible. Also, the cultural experience cannot be discarded, uh, but we have to be mindful of the cultural experience uh, cannot just overshadow the realness that's for solutions and how we approach obtaining those solutions. And of course, any organization, any group of people, uh, any small group of people have their own culture. They have their way of doing things. And it's important to understand the cultural experience uh, behind social movement, political movements, uh, even economic movements, and especially the cultural experience helps to shape how people respond to fresh ideas and And so when you have that generational transition and interaction, cannot lose sight of the cultural experience. And I do not mean just historical, the African American experience in terms of the diaspora and the slave trade, but the cultural experience of how people interact around their issues and their concerns, how people sustain themselves, the cultural experience of the daily routine, how vital and how valued the daily routine is. And so when that is disrupted, how does it impact people? And so that's part of understanding the cultural experience around people so that your leadership skills and your leadership and visionary concepts do not get uh, misinterpreted or misunderstood or discarded altogether because you miss the interpretation of the cultural experience. And that is so vital and so important. And in making for progress. And so when we talk about the cultural experience, we have to bring in the uh, the trends of the time, also the the history of those trends, and at the same time knowing what those trends represent for going forward. And it's the investment in the learning of the cultural experience that will enable fresh ideas to find new ground, fertile soil, so to speak, and at the same time not uh, bring about a divide or any degree of disrespect for those who are in the transitional phase of life. So there's so much to be gained in terms of how do we develop solutions um, and keep people engaged in their sojourn. And when you uh, understand the cultural experience, you do not want to discard the older generation or the sage wisdom generation. You want to get them more energized and recognizing the cultural experience and the need to have them around in an active and proactive role uh, creates a greater sounding board and a greater support mechanism, a greater support system that is needed when you are opposing uh, the oppressor. I'm going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about the fluidity of the narrative, the fluidity of the narrative. This is Brother to Brother Talk. We will take a break and we'll be right back. I'm Mark Carvin Olds, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. We'll be back with more solution-driven dialogue on Brother to Brother Talk.
GreenSpeech.com.
Welcome to the free audio rendering of Not Without Scars 2. Such an insightful and impactful work must be accessible to the countless number of people living similar life experiences. Becoming a best-selling author pales in comparison to creating a tool capable of instilling hope in a multitude of people trapped in the valley of decision. My greatest profit comes in helping others emerge victorious over their life struggles. My goal is to encourage individuals to follow their dream. My message: you must never quit on your faith, pursuing your aspiration or vision. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Take a moment, invite your family, friends and acquaintances, and enemies to listen to this work chapter by chapter. It is free to listen as well as free to subscribe. Peace, love, and phenomenal blessing.
How do I write my life story? I know hurt and pain. I don't like either one, whether physical or emotional. Herein contains my story, Not Without Scars Part 2. Optimism, Perseverance, Persistence, Resilience. 2 decades of personal struggle. Optimism. I faced the new millennium with hopefulness. Perseverance. My ego, my humble beginnings, my desire to achieve never allow me to turn away from a difficult task. Persistence. Opposition should be anticipated as an effective strategy to victory surfaces. Resilience. Difficulties do not automatically spell termination. Scars reveal my imperfection as reminders of past episodes of pain, sorrow, or triumph. Scars can tell beautiful story endings or relay misery that wishes to remain anonymous. This work is meant to help others who have experienced decades of struggle. When struggles appear to never end, you must get through the night and face the challenge of a new dawn with fresh hope.
Brother to Brother Talk. I'm your host, Mark Carbonell, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank. And here tonight we're dealing with the generational transition and interaction, grassroots recruitment, the cultural experience, fluidity of the narrative. And I just want to backtrack just for a moment to grassroots recruitment. We do not have to buy into the narrative that we need super numbers to be heard. That's part of the current system way of operation as it relates to the loud voice. The loud voice can be heard by one crying in the wilderness when that loud voice has a message for all the people. And so the grassroots recruitment for me at the Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation is to have one voice in every city. And so our goal at Brother to Brother Talk in the Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation is to get one person in 1,000 cities, whether that's a small town or major metropolitan area, whether it's a neighborhood within a city or a neighborhood within a community. Get one voice and get that one voice to speaking what all the other voices are saying. And then the solution rings loud and louder than the rhetoric or the roar of a great crowd. And so not to minimize what others are doing, that's their role. And we need to have multiplicities of approaches. And so we don't discard others simply to elevate one. All are important. All are needed. And that's why when we embrace a leadership role, we have to be mindful of the fluidity of the narrative. That fluidity of the narrative can work from the oppressor, sending forth mixed signals or changing the narrative each time you approach the target or take aim at the target. And so those who would be in leadership and must understand that even in their own narrative, there must be a degree of fluidity, and that fluidity is to counter the negative fluidity that will come your way, not change your solutions, but the approach in which you present your solution. Solution doesn't change. Your solution has to be your core value. The fluidity of the narrative, you have to be mindful of what is being spoken around you and what is being directed your way. But the fluidity of the narrative is important, that you do not compromise your solution and your approach to an issue or a conundrum. And that is why we just want you to understand the fluidity of the narrative is something that you cannot afford to overlook, cannot miss the importance of it, because whoever controls the narrative at that moment is in control of the power. And so in order to minimize the power of no matter how strong or imposing the opposition may be, if you understand the fluidity of the narrative and do not let the narrative drive you and make you become reactionary to the narrative, but stay focused on your solution driven motivation. And with that, you will definitely gain the outcome that you seek. And so it's important to understand the fluidity of the narrative, when to be aggressive toward the fluidity of the narrative, and how to understand when it's necessary to dissect it and dismantle it at the opportune time. Attacking the narrative full force immediately sometimes may not be the best approach. So understanding the fluidity of the narrative, sometimes you have to allow the narrative to change, of course, so that it will better pinpoint itself through its own fluidity when it's coming from that, which is a opposition to the advancement of your cause, or is at the brunt of the conundrum that you have to resolve on behalf of the people. And finally, this evening, I want to close with moving in an unconscious pattern. When the narrative is controlled by those who are the opposition or the oppressor, the people withdraw because they feel like they have no hope. And then they begin to move in an unconscious pattern, and they are controlled by the narrative because they are now moving in an unconscious pattern because they feel hopeless and helpless. And that's what we mean by a solution-driven motivation, that you keep the people engaged who are experiencing the conundrum to move forward in setting forth solution. Brother to brother talk is one aspect of how we get people to dialoguing about solutions and seeing the importance of always working toward the solution and spending less time bemoaning and lamenting the problem. There are those who will do the research. There are those who will spend their time wisely, even so, in gathering the statistics and the data. But when we get ready to have the solution, it's the people who are thinkers and people who object to moving in an unconscious pattern. I could say so much more about moving in an unconscious pattern, and perhaps we'll come back to it at some point. But I just wanted to share these thoughts with you this evening and let you know that Brother to Brother Talk is here for to afford you a platform whereby you can set forth the solution to the issues and concerns that affect you and your community and your people. Once again, I'm Mark Carvin-Olds, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank, here with Brother to Brother Talk, and trust that you have been enlightened somewhat this evening through this message. And it's all geared toward getting to the solution. So the generational transitional interaction is part of getting to a consistent and a systematic approach to setting forth solutions that will be of a benefit to all. And so I'm just thankful that you allowed me to share this with you this evening, and looking forward to another opportunity a week from now on Brother to Brother Talk. You